And I have hit star one.
Bob, you there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right. Well, welcome. Can everybody hear me? I don't know if we're on mute for everybody or just a few, but let's go ahead and get started since we're running a little bit late. My name is Rob Followell. Um, I am thrilled to be a part of the webinar today. Before we get started, let me tell you just a little bit about myself. I grew up in a wonderful, loving family with five kids. I have three older brothers and a younger sister. And from about age 12, I began working in my dad's full service gas station. And so I applied the lean principles daily without ever knowing what lean actually was. It's just how I think. And I have an undergraduate degree in social work from the University of Kentucky. And I have a master's degree in health administration also from the University of Kentucky. I've been a healthcare executive for over 25 years, the last 17 of those as CEO. Most recently, I was a market president over 4 hospitals. I've utilized the team at Auburn University in the Technical Assistance Center for the last 4 years, and I have completed a number of their programs, including the Lean Healthcare Certification Series. In 2017, I left my role as a healthcare executive to really follow my passion and my purpose, and I formed the Followell Company, Your Path to Servant Leadership. Our company is focused on three main things: speaking, coaching, and teaching, all around servant leadership. I'm a member of the John Maxwell team. Some of you may be familiar with John Maxwell, and I'm certified by Marshall Goldsmith, who wrote the book "What Got You Here Won't Get You There," in his stakeholder-centered coaching method. So introductions out of the way, and I know we're running a little bit um, behind on time, trying to figure out how to get this thing started. So I'm going to jump right in. Today, we're going to talk about trying to show you, and we'll talk about, I want to give you some tools that really focus on achieving sustainable results. And my goal is that when we leave today, that you have some clarity around this issue and that you begin to form a roadmap within yourself as to ways that you can improve effectiveness, you can improve efficiency, and create sustainable results within your own teams. I'm a huge fan of Chris McChesney, Sean Covey, and Jim Hurling's book, The Four Disciplines of Execution. And much of what I'm going to talk about today comes out of that book. Um, Oftentimes they refer to it as 4DX. So to shorten things today, if I refer to it, I'm going to talk about 4DX. You know, I told you that I was a John Maxwell team member, and John often says that you know you're on the road to success when the path is uphill all the way. And to succeed, we're going to need to be intentional and we need to be persistent in everything that we do. I really want to talk about 5 building blocks today that will really help us to drive and achieve not only results, but sustainable results, which is what we're all looking for. So those 5 building blocks are clarity of purpose and singular focus on goals. That's the first thing that we need to do. And then developing lead and lag measures, then creating a compelling visual scoreboard, having a cadence of accountability and communication, and then celebrating success. And this is, it's that simple, but it really is not that easy. And we'll see that as we go forward. So let's talk about clarity of purpose and that singular focus. I believe that the keys to success, as I mentioned, are it's really you have to have a vision. You have that vision, you have to be intentional in every single thing that you do, and then you need persistence. It really starts with why. In order for us to have and share a vision then we must have clarity of purpose. That one thing that each of us, I believe, were uniquely created for a single purpose. I don't know if any of you have had the opportunity to see the 80s movie, I think it was in the 80s, City Slicker with Billy Crystal. But there's a scene in this, and I don't really have time to share it with you, and I really had hoped to show you a clip of it. But in this, Billy Crystal, and he's out on this dude ranch with the crusty old cowboy Curly, and Curly tells him, that life is about one thing. And he holds up his finger, and Billy Crystal says, "Well, that's great, Curly, but what is that one thing?" And he said, "That's up to you to figure out. But if you do that one thing, nothing else really matters." And so, if you haven't seen that, I encourage you to go out to YouTube and check out. Just put in the one thing with Billy Crystal, or put in City Slickers, and that'll come up for you. But again, I believe that each of us is uniquely created for a single purpose. That doesn't mean that we can't be good at a lot of things. And if you consider Michael Jordan, who I believe is the greatest basketball player of all times. Well, Michael Jordan is an excellent golfer, but he's not good enough to make the PGA. And Michael also played minor league baseball. Some of you may remember that. He played for the Birmingham Barons, and I lived in just outside of Birmingham for a couple of years and attended those games, and his name's plastered everywhere. But he probably could not have even made that minor league team had his name not been Michael Jordan. And the fact that Barons the Birmingham Barons are a Chicago White Sox farm team. He probably couldn't even have made that. The point here is that while Michael Jordan is a superb athlete, he can do a lot of things well, but he was exceptional. He was extraordinary at basketball. And again, I believe that each of us is like Michael Jordan. The challenge is for us to find that one thing, and that is truly a life's journey for some of us. If we have the ability to focus, we all know the power of the sun, and I'll share a quick story with you. Last weekend, I was in shorts and no shirt, and I was behind my house, laying in my zero gravity chair, listening to a book study of Think and Grow Rich, while I was watching my sweet little 7-year-old daughter, who's quite a tomboy. She was playing in our creek behind our house, and I was in the sun for probably only about an hour, and you can probably already guess where this story is going. By the end of the day, I realized that I was sunburned. And as powerful as the sun is and can be while I'm laying there in my zero gravity chair, if I were to take a magnifying glass similar to the one that you see on screen here, and I was to focus the sun's rays on a singular focal point, like you see, I can start a fire in just a matter of seconds. I believe if you're intentional and you're persistent and you focus your attention and your energy, you can transform the everyday into the extraordinary and guide you towards your purpose. In driving towards our purpose, we need to ask ourselves a couple of questions. Number one, what is expected of us? And what are we willing to give? And that's not the same as what are we willing to give up, but what are we willing to give in order to reach our purpose? The clearer our target, the more laser focused we can be, and the greater chances of us actually hitting that target. We need to know what are our boundary conditions, those non-negotiables that we have, and where are the bright lines. Those are so key in controlling what we do on a day-to-day basis. In setting goals, we need to choose those which accomplishing our purpose depends upon them. We need to minimize the number of goals that we have at any one time. one or two is probably best. We need to have clarity. We need to be able to visualize that. These need to be our blueprints or our roadmap. They need to put our destination in front of us at all times so that we can see. And if you have one or two, if you have one goal, and let's say your chances of hitting that goal are 80%. If we have two goals at 80%, now our chances of hitting them are down to 64%, and that carries out the more goals you have. So the more focused you can be, the better. As Peter Drucker said, do first things first and second things not at all. Our goal needs to be our starting line, and we need to have a starting line, a finish line, and we need to have a deadline. We need to go from here to where by when. If our goals can have that, if our lag goals, which we'll talk about in a minute, will have those three things from here to where by when, we're on the road to success. We need to know where we are. What's our starting point? We need to be able to track that and know ahead of time what that starting point looks like so that we know exactly where we are today. A few weeks ago, I was in Chicago speaking at a conference, and I flew into O'Hare and I took the blue line, the subway downtown. I was going to the Hyatt, and I knew what station I needed to get off on, and I got off on the Washington station. But any of you who maybe have been there in Chicago or on any subway, when you come up above ground, you're not exactly sure where you are. At least I wasn't for the first time, and the hustle and bustle. And when I exited and I was on the street, I knew that I wanted to go to the Hyatt. And I had my Google Maps, and Google Maps is great if you're in the car, but any of you have had the experience maybe that I did, that when you're walking, Google Maps just doesn't work quite so easy. And so I probably went 10 blocks out of my way trying to find the Hyatt. I knew my destination, but where I wasn't quite so clear. So I didn't have that big "you are here" on my map as my starting point. So we need to know our starting point, and we must clearly define our end point so that we can keep our eye on the target. Had I been able to see the Hyatt in the distance, I could have reached it a whole lot easier. You have to know that, and you have to know when you've been successful. If you know what your end point's going to look like, then you know when you're successful. And we all deal with the whirlwind. The whirlwind are those things that we face every day. It's the urgent things that just happen in our daily life. Darren Hardy, who was the editor of Success Magazine, refers to this as the devil's vortex. And it's always going to be there. Good ideas are abundant. The hard thing is not trying to come up with good ideas. It's the hard thing is to know when to say no on some of these. And again, setting very clear boundaries from the beginning and knowing where those bright lines are will help you to stay focused on the main thing. Put the main things first. One of my favorite quotes is from Lewis Carroll out of Alice in Wonderland. If you don't know where you're going, any old road will get you there. The other thing is that you need to share your vision with others. Make it public. There is power in making a public commitment. Your accountability soars in making your vision public. There was a study related to weight loss, and they broke people down into three groups, and they put them through this study. One made a long-term public commitment. One group had a short-term public commitment, and one group had no public commitment at all. And there was at the end of the study, there was a 14% improvement in those reaching their weight loss goals from those who made their long-term public commitment to those who made no public commitment at all. All other things the same. And, John Maxwell talks about a parable that his dad used to share with him in the car. And he said, John, there are 5 frogs sitting on the log, and 4 of the frogs decide to jump in. And he said, John, how many frogs are left on the log? And John said, well, there's 1. And he said, no, son, there's 5 frogs left on the log, because there's a difference between deciding to or talking about it and actually taking the action to do it. So making that public commitment will make a difference in your enthusiasm, your engagement to take action. The next slide is identifying your lead and your lag measures. So this is really the second step. You've created your vision, you've taken the effort to share it with others, you've set your goals, and now the key is identifying lead and lag measures. This is truly about influence. And I know from this group, you're already well familiar with lead and lag measures, but these are the ones, it's about moving the needle. What can you influence? And we've all heard that what gets measured is what gets done, haven't we? And I know that from this group, you know a lot of examples from these, but I'm sure that you've heard about someone climbing the ladder to success only to find that their ladder is leaning against the wrong wall or the wrong building. Well, I think it's key. So if you're taking notes, write this one down for sure. As leaders, it is critical to assure that what you measure will carry you towards your purpose. Because what you measure is probably what's going to get done. You don't want to find yourself with your ladder against the wrong wall. So quickly, the lag measures, and I know you know these, but lag measures are those big rocks. These are the historical measures that by the time you receive the data, it's really too late to influence it or make a change. Those are things like profits, or we talked about weight loss, pounds lost, or in the hospital industry, if we're looking at hospital acquired conditions, that those might be falls. Or if you're in the real estate industry, it might be houses sold. Or if you're in manufacturing, it might be non-defect parts produced. And then the lead measures, those are the predictors of success on the lag measures. Some examples, we talked about weight loss. If our lag measure is pounds lost, then calories consumed or minutes of exercise, those would be lead measures. And some of the factors there or characteristics, they are predictors of success on the lag measures. And they're directly influenced by the team itself. And they're measurable in real time. But there's some difficulties in measuring lead measures. The lag measures are generally easy to measure. Those are the things that we keep up with all the time, and you get report after report showing those big numbers. But sometimes the lead measures can be pretty difficult. There's nothing set up to measure some of those things. Just like calories consumed, that's not nearly as easy to measure as stepping on the scales. So they can be difficult to measure. There may not be data collection processes established, and they can be even more difficult to sustain. But without data, you'll not be able to keep that consistency going on. You'll not know where you stand, and you won't be able to achieve the goals, and which can lead to the waning of engagement. And can you imagine sailing a ship across the ocean? If you started out on a specific bearing, let's say you're headed towards the coast of Portugal. If you didn't have it on autopilot, and you never checked the compass, think about this. What would be your level of confidence that you would actually reach your exact destination? The one that you set out on from the beginning, without that autopilot, without checking your compass. Now think about it this way. If you monitored that compass every 30 minutes, now what's your level of confidence that you're going to be right where you had set out to be? Your lead measure is the lever. It's the lever that moves that lag measure. We all know that we've heard about the 80-20 rule, Pareto's, and that's 20% of the activities yield 80% of the results. Well, we need to be able to focus a disproportionate share or a disproportionate amount of our energy and our attention on a few key lead measures that will, used as a lever, will move that lag measure. They're predictive and they're influenceable. The best lead measures are those that are chosen by the team with the approval of the leader. Again, you don't want your ladder against the wrong building, or you may accomplish what you're setting out to do, but it won't lead you to your purpose. People are more likely to be committed to their own ideas than of the ideas from someone from above. As a healthcare example, being a hospital CEO, we focus a lot on hospital acquired conditions and reducing those and eliminating them. And one of the things that we focus on is falls. So think about it this way. If we're trying to reduce falls, if our goal is reducing those hospital acquired conditions, and falls is the major goal for us, that's our lag measure. We want to remember that we need a from X to Y by when. So let's just say for our example, we're going to reduce falls from 10 per month to 5 per month by July 1st. We might have two lead measures. Let's say that we're going to increase the percentage of toileting at arm's length from 40% to 80% by July 1st, or increasing the percentage of shift reports that are completed at the bedside versus the nurse's station from 62% to 95% also by July 1. And I want to caution you too that oftentimes when people are thinking about what are my lead measures, they think about, let's take our lag measures. For instance, let's say that the lag measure was monthly ER visits. So it's a number there. And they want to just cut the frequency down and say, well, our lead measure is going to be daily ER visits. But daily ER visits are no more influenceable by the team than our monthly ER visits or annual ER visits. You may know that you're off track quicker, but the team still cannot directly influence the measure. So don't be tempted. And don't be tempted to focus on more than two critical lead measures at a time. Keep that laser focus. And I got to tell you, Rick and the team know that I have been guilty of that. Most people, when they start on this journey, they see all of these things are important. All of these measures that are possible are important, and they want to try to do them all at the same time, but you end up diminishing your return on investment. Atul Gawande he's a physician and a writer. He wrote the book, The Checklist Manifesto. Oftentimes we can use checklist to perform things that we need compliance on, but yet you need a way to follow through on those. And so if you haven't read the Checklist Manifesto, I encourage you to. We need to have a compelling visual scoreboard. Keeping score matters, and it matters virtually instantly. And some of you may be taking notes right now, and I would be afraid to ask of who was, but I'll bet you that if I said, listen, I'm going to offer a $500 gift certificate at the end of this call to a person that can answer 5 questions and get them all correct, I'm betting that more of you would start taking notes because the scoreboard really matters. It's about engagement. Without knowing what the score is, members will disengage, energy will dissipate, intensity will lag, and the team goes back into business as usual. You know that there's a story that comes from the book 4DX, and it centers around a high school football team that's playing a big game against their rival team. And the high school scoreboard was blown down the week before. Let's see. I'm sorry, my screen popped up there, so hopefully you guys are all on the same page here with me, still talking about the scoreboard. But I was talking about this high school football team, and their scoreboard blew down the week before during Hurricane Katrina. Lots of excitement surrounded this game, and prior to kickoff, there was a lot of movement, a lot of noise in the tailgate parties. The stands were full of people, but once kickoff started, something was missing. There was no one cheering. The only noise that was coming from the stands was this dull hum of conversation. There was no scoreboard. There was no score. There was no first downs or listed. Nobody could tell how much time was left on the clock. It couldn't tell how many yards were left. Without keeping score that everybody can see, the intensity and the commitment changes. And who's keeping score matters as well. When it's the player's scoreboard versus the coach's scoreboard. And there are four characteristics of a compelling player scoreboard. So number one, the scoreboard is simple. Going back to our football example there, there are 6 things on the average scoreboard for football. There's the score, the time, the quarter, the down and distance, and timeouts. Now, a coach's scoreboard may be totally different. A coach needs data to manage the game. So they're looking at tackles and receptions and yards per carry and those kinds of things. But the player scoreboard shows only the data that's needed to play the game. The scoreboard, secondly, needs to be visible to the team. If the team can't see the scoreboard, the lead and lag measures will quickly be forgotten. It drives accountability as well. If the teams can see the scoreboard, then the teams oftentimes will compete with each other. The night shift may compete with the day shift. And thirdly, it needs to show both the lead and the lag measures. This brings the scoreboard to life. The team can show then what they can see how what they do on a day-to-day basis is really impacting the overall score. And this movement then will impact their engagement. And fourth, at a glance, they need to be able to see who's winning and who's losing. The 5-second rule should apply. If you can't look at the scoreboard and tell within 5 seconds if you are failing or winning, then you have failed the test. It's not a game at that point. It's just data. It should show not only where you are, but where you should be. When the scoreboard is designed by the team, it increases their engagement. It's not the scoreboard that drives the results. It's the actual game that drives the results, right? When's the last time you heard a post-game show or a talk show and they're talking about, wow, what a great scoreboard? They don't do that. They're talking about the game. The scoreboard is a reflection. It's the way that the team can look quickly and see where they are. And if the players know the score and they can influence the lead measures, and if the lead measures will move the lag measures, then we have a winning game plan. I want you to think about this. Just take a moment and think about a time in your career when you were most excited and engaged in what you were doing. A time when you couldn't wait to get out of bed in the morning, when you were consumed with what you were doing professionally. Now ask yourself, did you feel like you were winning? I bet you do. I bet you did then. I bet you can remember that time and those pop right back up. I am afraid that you guys aren't seeing my screen move. So hang on one second. Hopefully you can see my screen now. We all want to be a part of a winning team. We want to feel like we have the opportunity every day to wake up and experience achievement. And we know that the power of progress is fundamental to human nature. If we have a motivating player scoreboard, then we use that visible power that then can progress to instill the mindset of winning. Let's talk about celebrating, or let's talk about the cadence of accountability. This is really about commitment. It's about everyone's commitment. We need to have a regularly scheduled team meeting that is focused on the goal, and it needs to be in a short enough cadence that it makes a difference. So weekly or even daily is best. These need to be focused solely on the goal at hand and don't let the whirlwind discussions come into it. You want to talk about the game last weekend or what's going on in the ICU. You want to stay focused on the goal. These meetings are important to the team members, and attendance is expected, not optional. Commitments are made for actions that are going to be taken by each individual, and they're made to the team, so they're made publicly. It's a public commitment on what one or two things can I do myself this week that's going to move the score. When individuals make a commitment to the boss, it's about job performance. When individuals commit to their teammates, it moves beyond job performance to a personal promise. How many of you have created elaborate strategic plans? I know I have at least 25 times over my career and probably many more. And there are mounds of data that you pour through and hours of preparation that go into those. You create 50 or more beautiful colored PowerPoint slides and you present to people in suits in big wood panel rooms, and you do it about once a year. In contrast, when we have the Cadence of Accountability meetings, you make and you adjust your plans on a weekly basis against the lead measures. And in essence, you're creating a just-in-time plan that could never have been predicted even 3 weeks ago, much less at the beginning of the year when those strategic plans are put together. And during these meetings, there's a brief report out on the status of previous commitments made from the last meeting by each team member. Did the actions that we took or that you took move the score? The team holds individuals accountable for their commitments. Again, it's all about accountability from the team. When the team members don't show up or they're not living up to their commitments from the previous week, it's the team that holds them accountable. And those accountability discussions are critical when team members don't live up to their commitments. And so just a couple of tips on those. Acknowledge when they don't live up, acknowledge that the team members acknowledge their efforts, acknowledge their value to the team. But you want to reiterate to them just how important it is that they achieve the goals that they committed, and that it's not in isolation, that their lack of follow through and achieving those committed goals impacts the entire team. And then you want to set expectations for how we're going to catch up. And, I once had a CFO that was a member of a team who literally ate people for lunch, yet did not live up to his own commitments. And the whirlwind was always the excuse. This had a tremendous negative impact on the rest of the team. Not only did his task, sometimes they were to clear the way for others, did they not get done, but his behavior demoralized the rest of the team, and we saw engagement wane. Now, I must admit that I did a terrible job of managing the situation and holding him accountable. The old adage of what you don't condemn, you condone. Well, I was certainly guilty of that. Accountability is not and was not my strength, but I continue to work on that every single day and try to get better at that. With regular Cadence of Accountability meetings, issues like that and others can be identified quickly and adjustments can be made. You also then have the support of the entire team. That peer pressure really plays in. Using the communication tips that we discussed, what I should have done was acknowledge his efforts, share with him how valuable he is to the team, validate the fact that the whirlwind is always there, and we all face it, but reiterate the importance of achieving his commitments to our goal. And as team members,
hey Rob, this is Hank. Just real quick, we're lost your slides a little bit, so I don't know if we can. And I'll let you continue.
Let's see if we can get those back. Are they back? Are the slides back, Hank?
Nope.
How about now?
Nope.
Let me try one more thing and we'll keep moving because I know we're short on time.
Yeah, and then if you're okay, I'll send out some of the slides to the audience too. Yep, you're good.
Okay. You see everything or just what's on the
Cadence of
screen?
Accountability, and then you have a pop-up there.
All right, let me see if I can get rid of our pop-up. That take care of it?
You're good.
Okay. So let's finish up with our cadence of accountability. You know, it actually, since we're rushed for time, let's move on to celebration. But let me close out a cadence of accountability by saying this: these meetings have to be and remain focused solely on the goal. They need to be timely, they need to be predictable, and they need to, from all the way from the top to the bottom, they need to be important, and the team needs to know that. It's about sharing, it's about moving the ball forward each week. What can we do this week and then going into the next week to make a difference on the score? So let's talk about the last thing, and that's about celebrating. It is critical that we celebrate. We're just coming off of March Madness, and hopefully everybody had a chance to watch some of the ball games. I'm a Kentucky fan, so I'm heartbroken this year. But if we don't win at all, we're heartbroken. But so I generally will watch a lot of those games. But you know, sometimes the entire momentum of a game can change on a single play, and celebrating progress creates forward momentum in everything that we do. So whether it's on the ball team, in the basketball court, or it's in the office, it's in the gym, wherever, celebrating creates that forward momentum. Sometimes the little wins become big wins. And if we stay with that basketball theme, have you ever seen a coach call timeout when things begin to go in the wrong direction? You know, I live in Tennessee and I lived in Knoxville. In fact, when I leave here or get off this call, I'm headed to Knoxville, and Pat Summitt's one of my heroes. And can you imagine her calling a timeout and pulling her team together to settle the team down, to get them to refocus? In doing that, in calling that timeout, you quiet the opposing crowd. So if consider being at an away game, and then you stop the celebration of the opposing team. And sometimes this can even restrict or truncate or even change the momentum by just calling a quick timeout. We need to celebrate our success and our milestones along the way in our path to achieving our goal. When the individuals see that their efforts are moving the score, it increases morale and engagement, and they feel empowered. This is and has a compounding effect as well. The small, seemingly insignificant steps completed over time will create radical differences. We want to make winning at the little things a habit. All right, let's get my screen to move. Okay. And let's close out by talking about the cycle. We've talked about each one of these so far. To make the largest impact on your targets that you've prioritized, and you need to focus your attention on the highest priority. You need to use the leverage of those lead measures to move the lag measures. You can't influence those lag measures directly, but you can influence those lead measures. They can be the lever to move those lag measures. You need to keep an up-to-date visual player scoreboard so everybody can see where they stand at all times. And you need to create and maintain a cadence of accountability and communication. We need to be able to hold each other accountable and move the ball forward every week. And then we need to celebrate our success. I know that this is not easy. It is simple, but it's not easy. You can see it on screen, you can hear about it, but implementing it every single day takes persistence, 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 persistence. I hope you picked up a few tidbits today, and I hope that you are leaving a roadmap is being formed in your head or a blueprint of what you can go implement later today or starting tomorrow that will help your team move the ball forward every day, every week, and you'll move closer. And remember that this is a cycle. So once you achieve goals, you want to set new goals and just keep that cycle going. I will stop here and open it up to questions. Hank, is the line open, or how do we open that for any potential questions?
Good. Well, Rob, I'm just asking everybody if they do have a question, just to type it in the question box out there. Have one for you, Rob, that someone typed in. Basically, this sounds real easy when you're the CEO of the organization. What if you're in the mid-level of an organization? What would be your recommendations on how to begin to implement the winning cycle?
I think the process is the same no matter what level you are. You have control of a certain sphere of influence. You may not control what goes on above you, but you have a vision. Let's say you're the director of the ICU and you set a goal for whatever that may be. You control that realm right there. And so the process stays the same. You create a vision and share that vision, and then use the team. Allow the team that you're going to be engaging to create those lead measures, and then allow the team with your input to create that scoreboard so that they see they had input into it. Put it up big, put it where everybody can see it. In the hospital world, we have a tendency to want to put it in the lounge. But if you can put it out where patients can see it, obviously there are certain things that you can't, but the more public you can be, the more accountability there is. And then that cadence of accountability, I can't tell you how important that is, and not to let that slip. Even if you can't be there for whatever reason, and that happens often, you need to appoint somebody who can be there and continue that cadence. There was a story in that book of 4DX about a father and a daughter that the dad would let the daughter drive the car as long as she washed the car every Saturday. And he was out of town for 2 Saturdays in a row, and it was totally lost. And he asked her about it, and she said, "Oh, are we still doing that?" And so that cadence of accountability has to be there. That you want everybody to know that they're going to be responsible each week, and they want to define what it is that they personally can do to impact the score in the coming week. So it doesn't have to be the CEO. I have no more control at the bottom necessarily than someone else. It's about getting engagement for the employees, or the team members. So it really doesn't matter what level you're at.
Good.
Does that help?
Rob, another question out there. You talked about the lead and lag measures. Typically, we're good with the lag measures, but talk about just how to identify, and is there an easy way to maybe generate some of the leading measures?
Well, that really depends on where you are, and so the questions that you want to ask, because everybody's coming from a different field and a different location, and the lag measures that, or the goals that they're trying to move, are going to be different. But again, we go back to, you want to pick a measure that, number one, is that it is influenceable by your team. It may be something that's great. In fact, if you can't influence it, just like those ER visits, like I mentioned, if you can't directly influence, it's not a good lead measure. If it's not a good predictor of your lag measure, it's not a good measure. You want something that you can influence, that is a predictor for the lag measure. And then the last part of that is you can measure it in real time. Because if it doesn't do you any good to hear about it next month, you need to have, the closer you can get to the actual time that you can influence, the better.
Rob had a question. They wanted to know your definition between purpose, mission, and vision, and then the differences between the purpose, mission, and vision, please.
Well, you could get 10 different books and get 10 different answers on this. To me, purpose is that big overarching. It says, okay, and this is just coming from Rob Followell, this is something that God has created me to do. He's equipped me. He has uniquely prepared me to do that. And then, so that's purpose. My mission might be the piece that I'm going out on to accomplish that purpose. So for me, it might be speaking to large groups, and then you break that down into some goals. And so the goals might be that I'm going to speak to the ASQ. Um, so all of those roll back up. So speaking or coaching leads to my overall purpose, which is to help others to grow to achieve their maximum purpose in life. I want, I used to say as a CEO, I was out to run hospitals. And then the further I progressed, I realized if I can make everybody that I come in contact with the very best that they can be, then my purpose will be fulfilled and the hospital is going to run itself. So I hope that helps. Mine is that purpose and vision, are at the top of the chain. And then as you move down into the goals and then tactics, but those lead and lag measures should still follow those, no matter how you're going to look at that. If you want to look at purpose, there should be some measures to say, am I accomplishing my purpose?
Good. Rob, with the winning cycle out there, as you look at starting the winning cycle, would you look more at starting on yourself and then the team, or starting with the team first? How would you recommend doing that?
I would start with the team. I mean, if you're leading the team, somebody is going to set forth and set the vision, and generally that the best scenario is with the team. So, but once that is set, then the team has got to be involved from every step of the way after that. They have to be able to buy into that vision and goal, or they won't really accomplish it. But then creating those lead measures, creating that scoreboard, developing that, and being involved in that cadence of accountability, and then everybody needs to be a part of celebrating.
Yeah, have probably two more questions out there. Rob, when you look at this and you're starting to generate change out there, a lot of times you may have some negative comments internally, negative perceptions. Any thoughts on how to begin to deal with that, or what you've found successful?
Absolutely. Anytime you are changing, there's going to be someone who doesn't want to change. That's just the nature of the beast. But again, if you follow the process and you start by putting your vision out there very public and talk about the why behind that vision, why it's important for us to go from here to there, then when the naysayers begin to come in, the more you can put that out there and shine a big spotlight on it. You want the masses to say, yes, it's uncomfortable, or yes, we may be changing this here and people have become accustomed to that, but look where we're going in the future. The more you can make that public and shine that light and talk about it, don't bury your head in the sand, but be out in front. Does that help, Hank?
Say, Rob, as you look at the winning cycle out there, how would that begin to correlate to plan, do, check, act?
It's very similar. It's very similar. You could overlay that in here. So the planning part is going to be the vision part, and the do part is going to be when you're setting those measures. That's part of the planning part. That scoreboard there is going to be the doing. I'm doing, and we're measuring it. Then, and then the checking is a part of the scoreboard, and that cadence of accountability. We're holding each other accountable. And then you're going to go right back into the circle. You want to be able to celebrate your victories, the successes, and then go right back in. So once you accomplish that one goal, it's time to set the next one and move on. And you need to have the next goal waiting in the wings. You don't want to have a lag between the time you complete the first one and now what are we going to do? You don't want to start on the one prior until the first one is complete, but you want to have it ready and waiting in the wings.
And Rob, I just want to kind of end on this one, just the different areas that we worked with you on. But could you share a little bit on how you tied some of your CEO leader standard work into the winning cycle?
Absolutely. The first thing, and for me, the big challenge was just understanding where I'm going, creating that vision, setting my goals, and it really creating that starting point. So beginning to measure where I am before I start, and to know what some of those interferences are in the process, and then creating so that the whole team is on the same page of where we're going to go, then working with the team to create the scoreboard. So we had our scoreboard where all of our directors could see it, and anybody who wanted to come. We want to be, and every department broke theirs down that rolled up to our grand vision. Each department knew how what they did impacted the overall goal. And so breaking that down by department and then into smaller and smaller blocks so that this goal relates to the next goal above it, and then creating those lead measures so that you could say, listen, if I'm toileting it at arm's length, I know that's a hassle, but I know that that leads to fewer falls, which leads to fewer falls for the hospital, which leads to fewer overall hospital acquired conditions. And it's better for our patients. One thing, we get paid more, or we're not giving up money. A second thing, and our reputation in our community goes up. Um, does that answer your question?
Yeah, Rob. And as I said, y'all just did just such a nice job of taking the same concepts here and really incorporate it into your daily habits, your daily routines, following the circle. Rob, I want to thank you. Thank you for presenting. Very informative. And like I said, for the folks that are on the line, I sure do appreciate y'all attending. If you need to contact Rob directly, rob.followell@gmail.com. And then I'm Hank Zarnicki. I think y'all probably have my email address. If there's anything we can do to help you along your lean journey, we would be glad to. So thank y'all for attending, and hopefully we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.